Greetings from the Guild, gamers. I'm Guildmaster Jason. Welcome to Tabletalk Tuesday. For those of you who may not know, Tabletalk Tuesday is when I, Guildmaster Jason, bring you guys a couple of tips on different topics of how to run your Dungeons and Dragons games or any other role-playing game for that matter. So today's topic is dealing with players who have amassed a huge fortune of gold and have no idea what to spend it on. Before we get started on this topic, let's take a look at money in the world of D&D. Now, the player's handbook tells us that an average laborer makes a silver in half a day, which I assume is an 8-hour workday. Meanwhile, a skilled artisan can make up to a gold coin a day, which is about 10 times as much as the laborer makes. Now, if you flip a couple pages in your player's handbook over to lifestyle expenses, you'll see that the laborer and the artisan can only really afford a squalid to modest lifestyle. Now compare that to an adventurer. When you consider the fact that most dungeons normally have at least a total of 100 gold in them, that can quickly result in your players being some very wealthy individuals. But what do they do with that wealth? Now, if you're a dungeon master who runs a game where you have a living, breathing world, then there are countless things that your party could foreseeably spend their money on. Most of these things fall into one of three categories. The first category we're going to talk about is roleplay expenses. These are things that don't necessarily help your character that much in the long run, but as far as role-playing your character effectively, it's things that your character would want to have. The biggest thing on this list, and I can't stress this enough, is lifestyle expenses. The reason I bring this up is because I know that I personally forget to use this in a lot of my campaigns. Another example of expenses your characters might have through roleplay is impulse buys. Sure, your character has 10 days of rations, but do you know what rations are? After a few days on the road, your character's probably going to get tired of eating dried jerky and shriveled up vegetables and fruits. When they come to the next town, they're probably going to want a hot meal and a cold ale. In addition to this, consider your character's personality when they're moving through market districts. We all have that friend that's easily swayed into buying something. And keep in mind, these street merchants are charlatans who make a living off convincing people to buy shit they don't need. Such a pretty madame. Only right that she should have such a pretty trinket to match. Normally valued at over 1,000 gold. I can see that this jewel's gleam yearns for you, so I'll give it to you for the low, low price of only 700 gold. Have we a deal? The point I'm getting at here is your characters are human. Well, maybe not, but you know what I mean. They're gonna spend money on stuff they don't need because it seemed like a good idea at the time, just like anyone else in our world. Okay, but I don't want to spend all this gold that I worked hard for on stuff that isn't gonna help out my character in the long run. That's where actual beneficial expenses come in. A perfect example of an expense that's actually beneficial to your party is purchasing a keep or a castle. Not only purchasing, but also maintaining it. Keep in mind, maintenance means keeping food in the house, making repairs, and if it's large enough, employing a crew of servants. Another thing your party could spend their gold on is magic items. Now, I know a lot of DMs kind of tend to frown upon having magic item shops, so to speak, within towns. But you can still have a merchant who sells nice trinkets and just happen to come upon something extraordinary. Now keep in mind, among the ranks of common folk who have never set foot in a dungeon, magic items are pretty rare. And most likely they're not going to be willing to let them go without paying a very steep price. In most campaigns that I've seen, magic items can run upwards of 1,000 gold. Finally, if the party that you're running a game for happens to have a cleric or a paladin or even just a lawful good character, that character could consider starting a charity, or perhaps just making a reputation for himself as a very charitable adventurer that roams from land to land. Now, at face value, this may seem like another roleplay expense, but it doesn't have to be, depending on your DM. As a cleric or a paladin, running this charity could be sort of an investment. Perhaps once you've raised enough money genuinely for charity, some sort of gifts might be bestowed upon you by your deity. Even if there aren't any religious individuals in your party, creating this reputation could just benefit your party in the long run in dealing with other people. A generous DM might even give your character the rustic hospitality feature. So that covers roleplay expenses and expenses that actually benefit your characters. Now let's talk about the third and my personal favorite option, expenses that advance the plot, or at least become part of the plot. You wake up at a strange tavern and suddenly realize all of your gold is gone. Did you spend it? Was it stolen? You have to find out. Even if it was stolen, by the time your party tracks down the person who stole it, chances are someone who stole money probably had some plans for it and already spent some of it. Then you have one of my favorite options, which is bribing a politician or any sort of powerful figure. Perhaps there's some kind of big controversial issue going on currently in your campaign, and your characters realize they can advance the plot forward by just paying off a politician. It's a great way to have your characters shell out a lot of gold in a way that they feel like they're actually using it for something. More specifically, the way this would probably work best in a D&D game would be the most interesting would be something like funding a military or perhaps purchasing a fleet of ships. If your party is involved with any type of military organizations in their native lands, this could be a huge power play for them. They now not only have the respect of that military, but are owed a favor. So that covers roleplay expenses, beneficial expenses, and plot expenses. These are just some examples I came up with, and I'm sure you guys have lots of great ideas as well. Feel free to share them in a comment or send us a message. Also, if you have something you'd like us to talk about for next week's Table Talk Tuesday, let us know. The best way to get a hold of us is through our Facebook page. Until next time, game on, gamers.